Thank you, Emma, for all the work that you do as a child care provider. I'm also a single mom, and both of my children, they started off in a home daycare. Both my son, who's going to be 20 years old, I can't believe it, next month, and my daughter, who's 12 years old. So first, I want to thank you for all that you do and the service that you provide to many parents, particularly a single parent who rely on affordable child care so that we can work. For me, it was working and going to school and also being a city councilwoman.
Siendo madre también me familiarizo con usted y quiero agradecerle por su trabajo. Yo creo que entendió más que todo lo que yo también tengo hijos pequeños y también hice parte de ese trabajo en el pasado.
So the three questions touch upon access to benefits and education as well as public safety. As healthcare, as a provider of education and childcare, it's important that we create avenues for you to have access to healthcare. Everyone should have access to healthcare. And that should be like a basic necessity. And as mayor, I would certainly work with the state to ensure that everyone in our city has access to basic care, because that is critical. And during these past few years, we've seen the importance of having access to healthcare through our neighborhood health centers, through a private provider. But that's something that should be part of everyone's basic amenities that they have, because that's part of your that helps you thrive. And it's one of the benefits that we all should have access to. In terms of education, so I am a graduate of Providence Public Schools. My children are Providence Public School kids as well. In fact, my sister's foster children was going to Kazarian, and I would drop them off, and I've been in the buildings. We have not done a good job in providing our kids with a quality education since I was in school, and our buildings are falling apart. In fact, when I went inside this building, I took photos, reached out to the superintendent to tell them how shocked I was by the condition and also the trash that I found in there when picking up the kids from their after-school program. So if we're sending our kids to these after-school programs that are investing high-quality after-school programs, the space that they're learning in should be of quality. That's why I worked on the First Fix Our School campaign to ensure that we pass the bond so that we can fix our school buildings. Now you have to translate all of that.
You're going too fast.
Do you want me to start again?
No. You started with healthcare, right? Was el acceso a programas de salud es uno de las necesidades básicas de los cuales todos necesitamos. Yo siendo del vecindario también entiendo de que la educación education is very important, and I took the liberty to walk into the school. Tomé la libertad de entrar a la escuela.
Ya lo confundieron.
Tomé la libertad de entrar a esta escuela y darme cuenta de que tiene muchas necesidades, que no tiene la limpieza necesaria ni da la apariencia de dar la seguridad necesaria para que los alumnos reciban su educación. O sea que una de las cosas más importantes es la salud y la educación de nuestros niños.
And then in terms of, hello, can everyone hear me now? Great. In terms of small businesses, part of my plan is having within economic development, having a small business liaison. Now, a lot of our communities have neighborhood associations, and we should actually be working with our neighborhood associations because they've already started doing the work. I know in my ward, particularly the Mount Hope Neighborhood Association, they're doing a lot of work in sharing information with the community, holding classes for people who might be interested in various things, from starting a small business. They've had workshops around housing, home ownership, etc. So we don't have to necessarily recreate the wheel because a lot of this stuff is happening. However, it's not necessarily supported. And I should slow down because English is not my first language, so I know better.
Una de las cosas que es muy importante es la educación at the beginning.
So I said in terms of small businesses, part of my plan is to have within economic development a small business liaison working with our small businesses, but also working with our neighborhood associations, because a lot of that work has already started within our neighborhood associations, but a lot of them don't have the resources. So to ensure that they have the resources so that we can provide them with the tools to support our small businesses, and they're already embedded in the neighborhood.
Para los negocios pequeños, quiero que establecer un contacto, que haya una comunicación entre las asociaciones del vecindario que se dedican a ayudar a los negocios pequeños, o sea que tratar de que esa conexión sea más constante y de que los negocios pequeños puedan recibir los beneficios y los recursos que necesitan.
And you know, there are a lot of barriers for people to do business in Providence, and when you're a small business, it's even more challenging because you don't have the infrastructure. So having that small business liaison working with our neighborhood association, the goal is to cut out some of these barriers and just to make information, tools, grants, and other opportunities more accessible to people in the community.
Yeah. Tratar de darles las herramientas necesarias y que se puedan tener la ayuda, el acceso a los recursos que ya existen dentro de estas asociaciones que se dedican a apoyar a los negocios pequeños.
And the other question was around public safety. Healthy communities are safer communities. So we can't talk about safe communities without also talking about healthy communities. And healthy communities are also communities that provide our kids with quality education, where people have access to high quality before and after school care, where there are investments in our neighborhoods for our youth employment opportunities, as well as summer jobs.
Crear fuentes de empleo para los jóvenes, la seguridad va muy de la mano con los recursos necesarios, que las personas tengan recursos necesarios de salud y de seguridad para todos, que los niños tengan lugares a donde ir después de la escuela a recibir apoyo para poder tener una educación completa.
So, as Bear, I am committed to implementing a community policing model. And a community policing model, it's also thinking about taking a proactive approach. Police officers who truly represent the community, walking the beats, engaging with community members, but also making the investments to prevent the crimes from happening, creating pathways for our young people. That's why, as a city council person, I was a strong advocate for youth and summer jobs, and also to expand the program so that we have it year round. And as mayor, one of the things that I would like to do is to create an apprenticeship program where we're connecting our young people to some of our local businesses, to our art industry. We also have a booming food industry right here in Providence, so that students could go to school to learn about urban farming, starting their own restaurant. And this is the work that I also do in higher education, which I hope to do as mayor.
Cuando yo sea alcalde, voy a ser parte de lo que he hecho anteriormente, crear unidades de policía que sean del vecindario, que conozcan al vecindario, que caminen el vecindario, que se comuniquen con los jóvenes y que les den oportunidad a los jóvenes de participar en programas que eviten de que ellos entren en situaciones de crimen. O sea que esa es una de las ideas que quiero llevar a cabo cuando sea alcalde, es de crear estos grupos de policía del vecindario que en realidad caminen y conozcan a los vecinos del área.
And finally, one of the things that I worked on is create a framework and for us to launch an initiative, a crisis response behavioral crisis response initiative in the city of Providence, excuse me. And one of the challenges too is that people are experiencing many different types of challenges in crisis. And if you're experiencing homelessness, if you're experiencing mental or behavioral health, one should not be criminalized for that. So part of the program is to send out trained workers to intervene, de-escalate the situation, but most importantly, connect folks to services. so that they can get the continued care that they need. And that also is part of public safety as well as healthy communities.
Y también crear un marco dentro del cual las personas no sean juzgadas necesariamente por si tienen problemas de salud mental, que no sean considerados estos como crímenes, sino que tratar de evitar de que estas personas, tratar de que estas personas reciban los recursos necesarios para que no tengan que llegar a ese tipo de actividades. Eso es otro de los programas que quiero hacer cuando llegue al puesto de alcalde.
And finally, affordability, the housing crisis. I was just talking earlier this week with a friend, and this is something I've shared, is even in my own neighborhood, I wouldn't be able to afford to purchase a home on my own block. And I live on a pretty modest block. And I've talked to people throughout the city of Providence, my own parents. My dad is 74 years old. And in fact, going back to the point about being in the neighborhood, the building, the red building where Sojourner House is located, for extra money, my dad used to clean that building. And I used to be with him cleaning so that he can give me some, a few dollars so we can go across the street to the thrift store so I could pick out a toy or a book. So most people in our city struggle just to make ends meet, and they have to work more than one job. So as mayor, I'm committed to, one, building more affordable housing. We received a significant amount of funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. I hope to work with the state to maximize those dollars. I actually passed legislation to create the task force so that the community can get engaged and decide how those funds can be allocated. And one of the priorities was housing. Also looking at zoning policies that have historically prevented development of more affordable housing, and ensuring that housing is for people who are unhoused with no income, low income, moderate income, and also our aging population.
Como vecina del vecindario, también yo tampoco podría poder pagar el precio de una casa en nuestros días. Los precios están súper altos. Cuando yo estaba creciendo, mi padre tenía que ir a limpiar. Where's the center that your father went to?
Oh, where the Sojourner House is located now.
Mi padre tenía que ir al centro de Sojourn para limpiar y poder ganar algunos dólares y para poder soportar a nuestra familia. O sea, de que hay fondos federales que están ayudando a personas de bajos recursos a poder soñar con poder obtener una casa. Y yo quiero que esos sueños se hagan realidad, usar esos fondos federales para de que las personas también puedan alcanzar ayuda y poder tener casas a un costo razonable.
Thank you, and you could go to votenirva.com to learn more. Thank you.
Gracias a todos. Pueden buscarme en mi página de internet para aprender un poco más. What is your...
Votenirva.com. Votenirva.com.
Votar por Nirva.com. Votenirva.com.